On this channel, we often mention the massive leaps and bounds forensic science has taken in the last few decades. Tools like the MVAC system and genealogy testing have brought answers to hundreds of cold cases that nobody ever thought would be solved. But it's also worth noting that there are still thousands of cases waiting to see justice. Join us for today's episode as we examine 3 chilling cases that are still unsolved in 2025. Amber Hagerman. 9-year-old Amber Hagerman was last seen riding her bike around Arlington, Texas on January 13, 1996. She had spent the day with her younger brother Ricky, riding around on their bikes, having left their grandmother's house at around 1:30 p.m. that afternoon. The siblings' grandmother had warned them to stay close, and they always did. However, after riding around the car park of an abandoned Winn-Dixie grocery store, Ricky decided to go home without his older sister because she wanted to stay out longer. When Ricky returned with his grandfather a short time later, there was no sign of Amber, only her pink bicycle, alone and abandoned. Arlington police would later tell the media outlets that a witness had seen the little girl being taken. Quote, he described the suspect carrying Amber in that same position as she kicked and screamed to his truck, putting her inside the driver's side door. The witness was an elderly man named Jimmy Kevill. He saw the black pickup truck pull up and noted that it had been parked at a nearby laundromat before Amber was taken. The perpetrator was described as being white or Hispanic in his 20s or 30s and under 6 feet tall with dark hair. Police believed that he was a local to the area. After witnessing the terrifying event, Jimmy called the police. In the following days, law enforcement searched for the little girl. The pickup truck seen at the time of her abduction had headed towards the center of Arlington, but there was no sign of her. 4 days later, on January 17th, her body was finally found. A man walking his dog late that night found her lying in a creek behind an apartment complex. Amber's clothes were missing, and severe laceration wounds were found on her neck. She was just 5 miles from where she was last seen, and her estimated date of death was January 15th. One police detective recalled the tremendous amount of violence used in the murder. Quote, Amber was totally nude except for a sock on her left foot. We rolled her over and I caught her head in my hands, several lacerations to the throat, a knife or screwdriver had been used to rip her throat out. While her family grieved, one local mother had an idea. She suggested to a radio station that a national alert system for missing children be created, which subsequently led to the creation of the Amber Alerts. With Amber being short for America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response, the alert system was launched in 1996 and today works by broadcasting the missing child's information via the likes of digital billboards, transportation signs, text messages, and Facebook alerts. It has contributed to the recovery of 1,221 children according to the official Amber Alert website. The website also states that such alerts serve as a deterrent for child predators, and have led to the release of some children after the perpetrator heard the Amber Alert. Though it has been nearly 3 decades since Amber went missing, investigators have stated that the case is still active. Arlington Police Sergeant Grant Gilden told People, "We continue to have leads, and there are still several leads that we continue to investigate extensively as possible suspects." A lot of people will refer to Amber's case as what's commonly referred to a cold case, but for the Arlington Police Department, it has never been listed as a cold case, because we've never gone 180 days without having some lead come in. Amber's case has received over 7,000 tips, and in 2021, investigators reported that they had DNA evidence that may belong to Amber's killer. But despite this, her killer remains at large. Police believe that there are witnesses who didn't come forward at the time, but may have relevant information. If you have any information about Amber's case, you can call the tip line, which was established shortly after she went missing, at 817-575-8823. Alternatively, you can call Crime Stoppers of Tarrant County anonymously at 817-469-8477. Vicki Lee Lamberton. Vicki Lee Lamberton grew up in Harper, Kansas, but by all accounts seemed to harbor feelings of shame around her upbringing, and often told people she was raised in Colorado instead. During her late teens, while attending Union College in Nebraska, Vicki met Lel Lamberton, who was her professor. The pair quickly struck up a romantic relationship, moving to Worcester in 1968 and marrying in 1969. At the time of her disappearance in 1974, Vicki, now 24, was on her way to obtaining her master's degree in psychology. She was studying at Assumption College in Worcester, Massachusetts, and with the help of her professor, Dr. Roger Barker, had visited New York City to apply for her psychology doctorate at Columbia University. But not all was thriving in Vicky's life. She had separated from her husband in January, and Lel suspected that she was in fact having a relationship with her married professor. In early February, she moved out of the home she was sharing with one of her brothers, Robert, and moved her belongings into Robert Barker's garage. Lel and Robert later saw her shopping with her professor, cementing the idea further that the pair were romantically involved. But despite this, sometime in February, Vicky reached out to her arranged husband. Over the phone, they discussed the idea of rekindling their relationship. Vicky suggested that they might meet up when she returned from a weekend trip to Maine she was taking with one of her friends, and said she would call him upon her return, but Lel never heard from her again. Alarm bells began to ring when Vicky didn't get in touch after that weekend. When Lowell contacted Vicky's friends, he discovered that no such trip had been planned. The friends stated, in fact, that she hadn't spoken to Vicky recently. Upon hearing this, Lowell decided to visit Roger Barker at Assumption College to ask if he knew where Vicky had gone. However, Barker wasn't present. Staff at the university informed Lel that he had spent the weekend on a skiing trip in Vail, Colorado, and that he'd been hospitalized with pneumonia, which delayed his return home. His wife had reportedly returned to Massachusetts without him. Lel pressed on anyway and visited Barker in March, about 1 month after Vicky was last heard from. Barker agreed that he had stored her belongings,